In 1974, a British housewife opened a tin of mandarin oranges, spooned them over a gammon steak, and called it a dinner party. Nobody blinked. That same year, women across the country were mixing lemon jelly with prawns, stabbing cheese and pineapple onto cocktail sticks, and serving cold curry from a packet as if it were haute cuisine. The 1970s did something strange to British food. Inflation was savage, power cuts plunged kitchens into darkness, and supermarkets were filling shelves with products that promised the future. What emerged was a decade of meals so bizarre, so wonderfully confident in their own oddness, that people genuinely loved them. Not ironically, not as a joke. They queued up for seconds. Number 14 on this list was the centerpiece of every office Christmas party in Britain. And number 3 was so popular, it outsold roast beef in some parts of the country. These are 25 strange British meals from the 1970s that people actually loved. Before we start, hit subscribe, because some of these will make you ring your nan. Number 25. Cheese and pineapple hedgehog. No buffet table in the 1970s was complete without it. A whole grapefruit or a foil-covered cabbage bristling with cocktail sticks, each one spearing a cube of cheddar and a chunk of tinned pineapple. The combination sounds absurd now, but in 1972 it was the height of sophistication. Hostesses spent hours assembling the hedgehog, pressing each stick into the base at careful angles so the whole thing resembled a golden, spiky creature guarding the vol au vents. The sweetness of the pineapple against sharp cheddar created a flavor combination that children adored and adults pretended to tolerate before going back for a third stick. A tin of Del Monte pineapple chunks cost about 12 pence. A block of cheddar, maybe 25 pence. For under 40 pence, you had a centerpiece that drew more attention than the host. The hedgehog appeared at wedding receptions, christenings, and every New Year's Eve party from Aberdeen to Penzance. It was edible decoration before the term existed. Number 24. Vesta boil-in-the-bag curry. When Vesta launched its packet meals in the early 1970s, it promised British families a taste of the exotic without leaving the kitchen. The beef curry came with a foil pouch of sauce, a sachet of dried rice, and instructions that made it sound like a NASA mission. The result was a pale brown sauce with chewy cubes of reconstituted beef, served over rice that stuck together in clumps. It tasted nothing like Indian food, but to a nation raised on meat and 2 veg, it was thrilling. A Vesta curry cost around 35 pence and served 2 people. Young couples cooked it to seem worldly. By 1975, Vesta was selling over 20 million packets a year. The cardboard box with its exotic illustration sat in kitchen cupboards beside the OXO cubes and the HP sauce, a tiny window to a wider world that most people had never visited. Number 23. Spam fritters. Spam had been a wartime staple, arriving in tins from America when fresh meat was impossible to find. By the 1970s, it should have disappeared, but instead someone decided to batter and deep fry it, and school canteens across the country adopted it as a Friday lunchtime fixture. Slice the spam thick, dip it in batter, and lower it into bubbling fat until the outside turned golden and crispy. Inside, the salty pink meat went soft and warm. Served with chips and baked beans, it was the meal that a generation of school children either loved or learned to endure. A tin cost about 30 pence, enough for 8 fritters. The crunch of the outside, the salt of the meat, the vinegar shaken over the chips. It was fish and chip shop logic applied to a tin of processed pork. Strange, undeniably, but millions ate it every week without complaint. Number 22. Prawn cocktail. If one dish defined dining in Britain in the 1970s, it was the prawn cocktail. A wine glass filled with shredded iceberg lettuce, topped with pink prawns drowning in Marie Rose sauce. finished with a wedge of lemon and a dusting of paprika. Every restaurant from the Burney Inn chain to the local tandoori offered it as a starter. Every dinner party hostess assembled rows of them before guests arrived. Marie Rose sauce was nothing more than mayonnaise mixed with tomato ketchup and a dash of Worcestershire sauce. The prawns were usually frozen and defrosted, sometimes tinned. The lettuce was always iceberg, yet the combination worked. It was cold, creamy, faintly sweet, and it looked like something from a magazine. By 1976, prawn cocktail was the most ordered starter in British restaurants, a dish so ubiquitous that chefs spent the next 3 decades trying to kill it off. They never quite succeeded. Number 21. Findus crispy pancakes. Findus introduced the crispy pancake in 1976, and it changed the landscape of British tea time. Inside a thin, crescent-shaped breadcrumb shell sat a filling of molten cheese, minced beef, or something described optimistically as chicken and mushroom. You cooked them from frozen, under the grill or in the oven, for about 15 minutes. The outside went crunchy, and the inside turned into a pocket of scalding hot filling that burned the roof of every child's mouth at least once. A box of 3 cost around 30 pence. Mothers loved them because they required no preparation. Children loved them because they tasted like nothing else in the kitchen. The cheese one was legendary. Break through the breadcrumb crust and a river of orange molten cheese would pour across the plate. It was fast food before fast food existed in most British towns. The crispy pancake was not sophisticated. It was not healthy. But it sold by the millions and became the defining convenience food of late 1970s Britain. Number 20. Gammon steak with pineapple ring. The gammon steak arrived on dinner plates in the 1970s like a Medal of Honor. A thick round of cured pork, grilled until the fat crisped at the edges, was crowned with a single ring of tinned pineapple and sometimes a glaced cherry perched on top like a jewel. It was the meal couples ordered on anniversary dinners, and mothers made when the in-laws were visiting. A gammon steak cost about 40 pence from the butcher. A tin of pineapple rings cost another 15 pence. The combination of salty, cured meat and sweet, tropical fruit was genuinely delicious, even if the presentation looked like something from a primary school art project. Served with chips and a grilled tomato, it held court on pub menus and kitchen tables across the country. The gammon steak with pineapple ring was the 1970s on a plate. Ambitious, slightly odd, and strangely satisfying. Number 19. Angel Delight. Butterscotch Angel Delight was not a meal in the traditional sense, but in thousands of households. In the 1970s, it was pudding, full stop. You whisked the powder into half a pint of cold milk for about 5 minutes, poured it into glass dishes, and refrigerated it until set. The result was a mousse-like substance, pale and wobbly, that tasted of artificial butterscotch and childhood. A sachet cost about 10 pence and served 4. Strawberry was popular. Chocolate had its fans. But butterscotch was the undisputed king. The texture sat somewhere between mousse and foam, light enough to eat 2 bowls without guilt, and sweet enough to make your teeth ache. Angel Delight appeared at birthday parties after school, and on Sunday evenings when nobody could face cooking. A generation grew up believing this was what pudding was supposed to taste like. Number 18. Toast toppers. Heinz toast toppers arrived in the mid-1970s, and they offered the strangest promise in British convenience food. It was a tin of savory paste, heated and spooned over toast, that somehow constituted a meal. Flavors included chicken and mushroom, ham and cheese, and mushroom and bacon. The paste was thick, beige, and gloopy. Spread over 2 slices of toast, it looked like something you might find in a hospital canteen. Yet families across Britain served it for lunch, for tea, and sometimes for supper when the week's budget had run dry. A tin cost about 18 pence and could cover 4 slices of toast generously. The chicken and mushroom version was the best seller. Children ate it without question. Adults ate it while pretending they had chosen to. Toast toppers sat in kitchen cupboards beside the baked beans and the tinned tomatoes. A quiet admission that sometimes dinner was whatever you could open with a tin opener. They vanished from shelves in the 1990s, mourned by a surprisingly vocal minority. Number 17. Chicken in a basket. The Bernie Inn chain turned chicken in a basket into an event. It was a whole portion of fried or roast chicken, served in an actual wicker basket, lined with a paper napkin, accompanied by chips, and sometimes a garnish of watercress that nobody ate. By 1975, there were over 150 Bernie Inns across Britain, and chicken in a basket was the signature dish. Families drove miles for it. The basket made it feel special, as if eating chicken from a wicker container somehow elevated the whole experience. Children fought over the legs. Mothers enjoyed not having to cook. A meal cost around £1.50, a significant sum, but the basket made it feel like value. Eating out was still a luxury for most families. When Bernie Inn declined in the 1980s, the dish went with it. The baskets were thrown away, but the memory of that first proper meal out lingers for millions. Number 16. Savory mince on toast. When the week's money ran thin and the meat in the fridge amounted to half a pound of mince, British mothers turned to savory mince. Brown the mince with an onion. Add an OXO cube dissolved in water. Stir in a spoonful of gravy granules. Simmer until thick, then serve on toast. That was it. No herbs, no wine, no pretension. A pound of beef mince cost about 35 pence in 1974. Stretched with gravy, it could feed 4 people, each with 2 slices of toast. The taste was pure umami, beefy and salty, with the soft crunch of the toast going soggy beneath. Children drowned it in brown sauce. Fathers ate it in front of the television. It was the meal nobody talked about at work the next day. Yet savory mince appeared on kitchen tables more often than any roast or casserole. It was honest food, born of tight budgets and the understanding that being filling was more important than being fancy. Number 15. Black Forest Gateau. In the 1970s, Black Forest Gateau conquered Britain's tables with the same unstoppable force as flared trousers and brown wallpaper. Layers of chocolate sponge soaked in kirsch, filled with whipped cream and black cherries, then covered in more cream, chocolate curls, and yet more cherries. By 1977, it was the most popular cake in Britain. Frozen versions sold by the hundreds of thousands, pulled from the freezer hours before guests arrived and presented as if homemade. The bitter chocolate against the sharp cherries, the sweetness of the cream, the slight boozy hit of the kirsch. It looked spectacular. A frozen gateau cost about 80 pence. Homemade versions were rare because they required skill, but nobody cared about provenance. The gateau was the star. It ruled the decade, and then vanished almost overnight when Nouvelle Cuisine arrived and told everyone to stop enjoying themselves. Number 14. Cheese fondue. The fondue set appeared under Christmas trees across Britain in the early 1970s, and for a brief, glorious period, melted cheese became the centerpiece of adult entertainment. A ceramic pot sat over a small burner, filled with melted Gruyere and Emmental mixed with white wine. Guests speared cubes of bread on long forks and dipped them into the bubbling cheese, trailing golden strings across the tablecloth. The rule was simple. If your bread fell off the fork into the pot, you had to kiss the person next to you or buy the next bottle of wine. A fondue set cost about £3. The cheese was the expensive part, maybe £1 for enough to serve 6. Couples hosted fondue evenings, the way a later generation would host dinner parties. The flat smelled of melted cheese for days. The fondue set was eventually packed away when people realized they had used it exactly 3 times. But those 3 times were magnificent. Number 13. Arctic Roll. Wall's Arctic Roll was the ice cream cake that required no skill, no baking, and no talent whatsoever. A cylinder of vanilla ice cream wrapped in a thin layer of sponge cake with a ribbon of raspberry jam running through the center. You took it from the freezer, sliced it into rounds, and served. Each slice looked like a target, white and gold with a red bullseye. A whole Arctic roll cost about 35 pence and served 6. It appeared at birthday parties, Sunday lunches, and any occasion where pudding was expected, but effort was not. Children loved the combination of cold ice cream and soft sponge. Adults appreciated that it looked like they had made something when they had merely operated a knife. The Arctic roll spent decades in British freezers, as reliable as the fish fingers and the frozen peas. It was not exotic. It was not clever. But it was always there, waiting in the freezer for the moment when someone said the words every child in the 1970s longed to hear. There is Arctic roll for afters. Number 12. Coronation chicken. Originally created for the Queen's coronation in 1953, Coronation chicken reached peak popularity in the 1970s, when it became the default filling for every buffet sandwich, jacket potato, and vol au vent in the country. Cold chicken mixed with mayonnaise, curry powder, mango chutney, and sometimes sultanas. The color was a lurid yellow. The taste was sweet, mildly spicy, and completely addictive. A bowl of it sat at every office Christmas party, every village fete, and every funeral reception from 1970 to 1979. The curry powder was always mild. The chicken was usually leftovers from Sunday's roast. The mango chutney came from a jar that had been open in the fridge for months. Yet the combination worked beautifully, sweet, savory, and creamy all at once. Coronation chicken was exotic enough to feel special, but familiar enough to offend nobody. It was the great diplomatic dish of the decade, equally at home on a paper plate at a scout hut or a porcelain dish at a garden party. Number 11. Smash with everything. Cadbury's Smash Instant Mashed Potato arrived with a television advert so memorable that the Smash robots became cultural icons. The product itself was dehydrated potato flakes. Add boiling water, stir, and you had something that resembled mashed potato if you did not look too closely or think about it too hard. A packet cost about 15 pence and made enough for 4 servings. By 1975, Smash outsold fresh potatoes in some supermarkets. Mothers served it beside sausages, fish fingers, pies, and anything that needed a starchy companion. The texture was smooth but slightly gluey. The flavor was mild, vaguely potato-like, and entirely dependent on the amount of butter you added. Children preferred it to real mash because it was smoother. Fathers tolerated it, and the Smash robots on television convinced everyone that making real mashed potato was a ridiculous waste of time. Peeling, boiling, mashing. How primitive. Smash was the future, and for a while, nobody questioned it. Number 10. Liver sausage sandwiches. Liver sausage spread on white bread with a layer of salad cream was the packed lunch of the 1970s. The pale pink paste came in a tube or a plastic tub, smooth and faintly metallic, with a rich offal flavor that divided opinion more sharply than any political argument. Children who grew up eating liver sausage sandwiches either craved them for life or recoiled at the memory. A tube cost about 20 pence and lasted the week. Spread thin on sliced white, wrapped in cling film, and tucked into a lunchbox beside an apple and a penguin biscuit, it fueled a generation through double maths and PE. The smell when you opened the lunchbox was distinctive. Other children either envied you or moved seats. When pâté arrived in the 1980s, liver sausage quietly retreated. But for those who knew, nothing from a French deli ever quite matched that first bite of liver sausage on white. Number 9. Salad cream on everything. In the 1970s, Heinz salad cream was not a condiment. It was a way of life, poured over lettuce, tomatoes, and cucumber, of course, but also over chips, cold meat, sandwiches, boiled eggs, and anything that sat still long enough. A bottle cost about 18 pence and rarely survived the week. The flavor was tangy, sweet, and vinegary. Nothing like mayonnaise, which was considered foreign and suspicious. Salad cream was British, familiar, and comforting. Mothers drowned limp salads in it. Fathers squeezed it directly onto cold ham. Children dipped chips into it because ketchup had run out. It was the universal sauce of the decade. When mayonnaise finally conquered Britain in the 1990s, salad cream retreated to the back of the fridge door, but it never truly surrendered. Number 8. Cheese and onion flan. The cheese and onion flan held court at every buffet in the 1970s with quiet confidence. A short-crust pastry case filled with eggs, milk, grated cheddar, and softened onions, baked until golden and served cold in neat triangles. It was the vegetarian option before vegetarians existed. It appeared at every village hall event, every school fair, and every family gathering where someone needed to bring a dish. A flan could be made for under 30 pence and fed 8 people. The pastry went slightly soggy at the bottom, which everybody pretended not to notice. The filling was creamy and mild, the onions just sweet enough to balance the cheese. Some added a tomato on top for color. Others scattered herbs with a daring that bordered on continental. The cheese and onion flan asked very little and gave just enough. Number 7. Pot noodle. When pot noodle launched in Britain in 1977, it promised something revolutionary: a complete hot meal in a plastic pot. Just add boiling water, wait 4 minutes, and eat. The flavors were chicken and mushroom, beef and tomato, and curry. The noodles were thin and slightly rubbery. The sauce was thick, salty, and intensely flavored with a monosodium glutamate punch that made everything else taste bland. A pot noodle cost about 25 pence. Students adopted it immediately. Workers ate them at desks. Teenagers made them after school. It was the first truly solo meal. No plates, no washing up, no sharing. Just you, a fork, and a steaming pot eaten standing in the kitchen. Mothers called it laziness. But pot noodle sold millions in its first year. It was convenience stripped to its absolute minimum. Number 6. Sandwich spread. Heinz sandwich spread was the mystery filling that sustained packed lunches through the decade. A pale, crunchy relish of finely diced vegetables in a sweet mayonnaise base. Spread thick on white bread and eaten without question by millions of school children. Nobody knew exactly what was in it. The label mentioned gherkins, onions, and red peppers, but the taste was something else entirely. Sweet, tangy, and crunchy in a way that defied the individual ingredients. A jar cost 20 pence and lasted a fortnight. Children who opened their lunch boxes to find sandwich spread either accepted their fate or attempted to trade with a neighbor. You were a sandwich spread family, or you were not. The jar sat in fridges across Britain like a quiet confession. We do not know what this is, but we keep buying it. Number 5. Cheese and pickle Plowmans. The Plowman's lunch became a pub staple in the 1970s, though its origins were more marketing than heritage. The Milk Marketing Board promoted it aggressively to boost cheese sales. and pubs adopted it as the simplest possible bar meal. A chunk of cheddar, a spoonful of Branston pickle, a bread roll, a pickled onion, and perhaps a limp lettuce leaf. The sharp cheddar against the sweet, spicy Branston pickle created a flavor so satisfying that people forgot they were essentially eating cheese on bread. A Plowman's cost about 60 pence in a pub. It became the default lunch for anyone who wanted to eat without actually cooking. The Plowman's was proof that the British could turn the simplest ingredients into a named meal and convince themselves it was a tradition. Number 4. Chicken Kiev. The frozen chicken Kiev arrived in British supermarkets in the late 1970s and immediately became the dinner party shortcut of choice. A breaded chicken breast stuffed with garlic butter, which when cooked correctly released a dramatic rush of hot, herb-flecked butter at the first cut of the knife. The trick was not to overcook it. Leave it in the oven too long, and the butter leaked out, leaving a dry shell. Leave it in too short, and the breadcrumbs stayed pale, and the chicken was still cold in the center. A box of 2 cost about 90 pence. For that money you had a main course that looked and tasted expensive. The garlic butter was the star, rich, herby, and startlingly flavorful for a nation that still viewed garlic with deep suspicion. Dinner guests watched the knife pierce the breadcrumb crust and the golden butter pour forth like something from a cookery program. Nobody mentioned it came from a box in the freezer. The chicken Kiev was the great pretender of 1970s British dining. Sophisticated on the plate, Findus in the kitchen. Number 3. The fish finger tea. If one meal defined childhood tea time in the 1970s, it was the fish finger, but not served with anything sensible. Fish fingers with baked beans and smash. Fish fingers in a sandwich with tomato ketchup. Fish fingers with chips and a fried egg. The fish finger was the universal building block of the decade's children's meals, served in combinations that would make a nutritionist weep. Captain Birdseye smiled from every box, promising cod in golden breadcrumbs. A box of 10 cost about 30 pence. Mothers could assemble a complete tea in 15 minutes using nothing but the freezer and the grill. The fish finger tea was not a recipe. It was a system. Monday was fish fingers and beans. Wednesday was fish fingers and chips. Friday was fish fingers and whatever was left. The taste of hot breadcrumbs, soft white fish, and ketchup is the flavor of childhood in the 1970s for an entire generation. Number 2. Prawn vol au vents. The vol au vent was the 1970s dinner party in miniature. A puff pastry case the size of a golf ball, filled with prawns in a creamy sauce, served warm on a doily-lined plate. Every ambitious hostess mastered the vol au vent because it said sophistication without requiring actual culinary talent. The pastry cases came frozen, and the filling was tinned prawns stirred into a white sauce from a packet mix. Assembly took minutes. The result looked like something from a French restaurant if you had never been to a French restaurant. Trays circulated at every party, their tops perched at jaunty angles, their fillings threatening to spill onto the carpet. The prawn version was the favorite, though mushroom and chicken ran close. At about 5 pence per vol au vent, they were cheap enough to make dozens, and you needed dozens. They vanished from plates faster than anything else on the buffet. The vol au vent was the 1970s in pastry form, over-ambitious, slightly messy, and completely irresistible. Number 1. The full 1970s dinner party spread. If you attended a dinner party in 1974, you knew exactly what was coming. Prawn cocktail to start, served in glass dishes on a bed of shredded lettuce. Then chicken chasseur or beef stroganoff for the main course, made from a recipe torn out of a magazine. Served with rice because rice was exotic. Black Forest gateau for pudding, pulled from the freezer that morning. Coffee with after 8 mince on a saucer. The table was set with candles and a tablecloth. The host wore a new shirt. The hostess had been cooking since lunchtime. The guests arrived with a bottle of blue Nun and complimented the avocado bathroom suite on the way in. Nobody questioned why the prawn cocktail tasted of ketchup or why the gateau was slightly frozen in the middle. The whole evening was a performance, a communal agreement that this was how civilized people ate. Every dish on that table would be mocked within a decade, but on that night, with the candles lit and the blue Nun poured, it was magnificent. The full 1970s dinner party was British optimism served on a plate. Strange, generous, and completely unforgettable. These 25 meals were not mistakes. They were a decade finding its feet. The 1970s kitchen sat between the thrift of the post-war years and the excess of the 1980s. Tinned pineapple met cheddar cheese. Frozen convenience met dinner party ambition. Packet mixes met genuine creativity. And the result was food that a generation loved without apology. If you grew up eating any of these, drop a comment and tell me which one takes you straight back. Subscribe if you have not already.